Welcome to the University of Wyoming. So here's my question. I fundamentally disagree with you in regards to having a family and getting married in this day and age. And I'll tell you why. 70% of the divorce rates happen because of women. Okay? That's a fact. Before we get angry, let's talk about the facts. You can Google this too. And on top of that, 85% of the men, or I should say people in jail, grow up in fatherless homes. So there's a direct correlation between those two things. So my thinking is that we don't need to necessarily have more families unless we have a complete change to the system. Now, what do you think about that? We need to change the system in order for us to have a nice conversation about, having a family, because the state incentivizes single motherhood in this country. And you're looking at me with that face, but tell me why.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Like, what is your contention, that we shouldn't get married and have kids?
Oh man, I'm going to fast forward for the next few minutes of this. He's going to try to get into this guy's personal life and try to humiliate him. I'm going to skip through that, and I'm going to show you the real meat of his answer.
The premise. I reject the premise. I think that we as men must lead. Women might initiate it, but we as men don't take the directive to have peace in the home.
Well,
I reject the premise. Hold on, time out.
Okay, go on.
Let me finish.
Right,
I reject the premise. Yes, women might initiate the divorce proceeding, but we are the one as men that ignore the subterranean threat and the brush fire that is growing. We're the ones that should take the family back to church, that go seek counseling if necessary.
And I don't disagree with it.
It's not good enough just to say, like, hey, it's women that initiate it. It's men who don't act, I think, confidently and strong enough in most cases to actually make sure that marriage is a safe haven to have children in a wholly protected place.
And I think that makes sense. And let me say this. Okay, let's find some common ground. So we know that the system is flawed, right? So here's the thing that's flawed about it. When the federal government incentivizes the state, at the state level, for child support enforcement programs, and we have a system where the state makes a bunch of money off of this, it's pretty parasitic, because there's no such thing as a 50-50 custody in Wyoming, even if you get along with the parent. So when the state is actively involved with family matters and women are getting paid off from this, and this is not false, we have a toxic system that probably needs to be revised. Do you not disagree with that? Because
I think we should revise. I do believe in more men's rights in custody. I think that's fine. But let's take a step back though, and I think it's very important, is that men are objectively better when they are married and they don't stay as grown infant boys watching porn and playing video games all day long.
And I don't.
Yeah, I agree with the fact that men are objectively better when. I do agree that men and women are objectively better together than apart, but he's still not addressing, how do we tackle this predatory system? And because once you sign the marriage contract, once you're licensed as married.
Disagree with that.
Good, so we agree.
I agree.
Here's my argument. Despite the problems of the legal system, of which your argument has some merit, we still should get married because it is the right thing to do. Despite the technical problems, despite the difficulties, in fact, it's us men to find a woman that we love and to protect that marriage and hope that it never goes in the direction of divorce.
Yeah, okay. I just caught Charlie just infantilizing us men. Here's the thing. I was pubescent. I went through puberty right around the age of 6. So I've thought about having a family way before I was 10 years old. Okay, maybe not way before, a little bit before 10 years old. Probably 8, 9, 10 years of age. That's when I just started thinking about having a family. And that's not the reason why people are staying away from marriage. Um, and he's just selling people blind hope and just leading people to slaughter. I mean, this is just ridiculous what Charlie is doing, um, because it's pretty much designed to completely crush men, destroy their lives, the system, and he's just leading young men essentially to slaughter. Unfreaking believable. Oh yeah, Charlie Kirk destroys anti-woman man bashing marriage. Like, look at the nerve of this guy to even write a title like that for this video. And it gets really bad. Like when the first few comments are saying stuff like this, and these are like probably his most loyal supporters. So Ashuri8219, the guy spoke respectfully and made his point clear. He's not against marriage itself or having kids and starting a family. His issue is with the current marriage laws, which often give unfair advantages, especially to women, after divorce, and can even incentivize it. That's why many men are afraid to get married, not because they don't want commitment, but because of the legal risks involved. Instead of addressing his actual arguments, Charlie twisted his words and tried to humiliate him. Even though he was being calm and respectful, it was hard to watch. And I say this as a woman, I completely understood what he meant, and he made some valid points. If we really want to promote marriage and healthier families, we need to fix the laws around it. You can't just tell people to get married and ignore the serious consequences many face. Yeah, that's true. And Hatchumosk1 says, guy comes with facts. Charlie? Well, I think it's mostly men. And Trave Vlog, the statistics he quoted are correct. That is not anti-woman. Ahmed Balto 5238, calling him anti-woman because he cited statistics was cringe. It's like being called racist for citing FBI statistics on demographics. Keith 5711, this is exactly why men have left the dating scene. It doesn't matter if the man wants to make the marriage better. The most common reason listed for divorce is no fault. If he did nothing wrong, what is there to fix? I'm having the same issue with Daily Wire. Instead of giving us an answer, they just slander us as woman haters, and it is simply not true. Just shut up and deal with it isn't an enticing argument. And men won't get back into getting married until it's addressed and fixed. The Cart 54321, I think this may be the first time in history I agree with the speaker over Charlie Kirk. I mean, I get his reasoning. SL Cool Cats, Charlie's advice for young men worried about marriages: you're the man, you get to take all the risks, and if she leaves you, it's definitely your fault. Boy, can't wait to get married. SMH, shaking my head. Miles K 2005, I actually agree with the guy. Men get shafted within the divorce and child support. Badly not a level playing field. Definitely needs revised. So, like, if the first few comments are ratioing him this bad, and these are people, and people who watch Charlie Kirk, they're conservatives. They vote Republican typically, and they probably voted for Trump too. Like, and it's his own people that's ratioing him. So with that being said, let's dive into some of the deeper nuances to this. Like, why are people like Charlie Kirk so off about stuff like this when they shine in other places? And we are going to learn about that.
Let me keep going here. So, every religion, social philosophy, or sexual strategy is grounded in working with these two instincts: the female instinct to submit and the male instinct to protect. Ergo, traditional conservatism, tradcons, is an attempt to maximize the male protective instinct through indoctrination and social learning for the benefit of women. So when you hear tradcons say men need to man up and take their masculine duties and their responsibilities, and they don't never talk about authority, of course, but they want to say, hey, men need to man up. Men need to be men. Men need to stop being a mangina, right? Men need to be dominant. Men need to be leaders in their family.
Oh, I apologize. Yeah, that should be better.
Ladies, let him lead. Allow him the authority that you assume you have already, ladies. So let him lead, right? You could be a servant leader, right? All this bullshit about leadership and a return to tradition, like that kind of stuff. All that shit is an attempt to maximize the male protective instinct through indoctrination and social learning. Now, you're going to feel as if you should be protecting women. You're going to feel as if you should be providing and being parentally invested. That's why guys who don't fuck, that's why they hate dudes who do fuck. Right? That's the guy who uses or has promiscuity, let's just say for lack of a better word, promiscuity as his mating strategy, and this guy is using monogamy as his mating strategy. That's why they conflict, because it's going against that protector dynamic, right? I'm going to fuck a lot of women. Because that's just how it is. I can do it. We're in the post-sexual revolution era right now. Why wouldn't I? I have the advantage. I can do it. Why wouldn't I? It's not psychotic. It's not fucking dark triad. It's just simple pragmatism. If you were Justin Waller and you look like that and you were that, it's like you would do it too. You would live exactly the same fucking way. Exactly. But it's because it's about pragmatism. It's not about dark triads. It's not about being an evil son of a bitch or a degenerate. It's just simply more pragmatic for him to, well, maybe I don't want to throw Justin under the bus, but if you are that guy and you have the sport fucking gene, then it's more pragmatic for you to do that, right? Well, the guys who can't do that, who use monogamy as their mating strategy, well, that doesn't mix very well with what they have to do by necessity, right? So, but you'll see traditional conservatives will use that protector dynamic as in the form of masculine duty or honor. That's where that comes from. You're an honorable man, a high quality man does what I tell him to do. A real man protects women. A real man takes the responsibility of another man's child. He's not the stepdad. He's the dad who steps up. That you will see that is all over traditional conservatism. In fact, I think that's where it originated. Like, you're not the stepdad, you're the dad who stepped up. It's retroactive cuckoldry. Oh, she's got a baby daddy. Well, you're more of a man than he is, because you're taking your masculine responsibility and you're going to provide and protect and provision for that fucking kid. Or you're going to be parentally invested in the DNA of another man's child, because that's what's masculine, honorable, and you want to protect this vulnerable, single mommy, right? Jesus said you're supposed to do that. Now get on your knees, servant leader. Okay, then we have feminism. Feminism is an attempt to minimize the female submissive instinct, also through social indoctrination, to enable women to more ruthlessly exploit the male protective instinct for the benefit of women. Okay. So again, this is have it all. You can have it all. Literally, you can have old order, old style provisioning, protection, and parental investment. And you can expect that. And you can also expect your own independence and your own authority, because everything's 50-50, right? So again, what it's doing is it's exploiting that protector dynamic, but what it's doing in this case is that's minimizing women's submissiveness, or that innate natural need. Like if you read some of these articles of women who are but are maybe even present feminists, and they'll say, I'm really attracted to traditionally conservative guys because they're like real men. Like, I like a guy who can take control. I like a guy who pays for a date. I like a guy who steps up, right? Even if they'll say, I'm so conflicted. I'm so conflicted because I like this guy and he's like votes for fucking Trump. Like all these chicks who are like saying, I'm going to hold out. I'm not going to fuck anybody because you guys voted for the wrong dude, right? Give it 4 months. Not even that. Give it a month, right? And because those same chicks are still attracted to the guy who's 6 foot tall, 6-pack abs, 6-figure income, bigger than a 6-inch, drives more than a 6-cylinder car. Yeah, I mean, you'll see that because it's biological. I don't care what the social programming is, because remember when I talk about like the triune mind theory, right? You have to remember that there is instinct, emotion, and reason. That's one. The other part is if you are the way that I look at sort of like the mechanics of the brain, right, is you have long-term memory, like just like a computer. You have short-term memory. Okay, you've got random access memory. You got that stuff. So you have the hardware, which is the computer itself. You have this. You have the firmware, which is what's required to run the hardware itself, and then you've got the software. Well, the software in this case for women is feminism. Okay, the physical side of it is their evolved physique, like how the brain works. And then there's the firmware, which is what we're just talking about here, is this innate desire to want to obey and want to be involved with a physically dominant man who she can trust because she's the vulnerable sex. Somewhere in the back of that lizard brain, in the hind brain, women know that that's what they want, or that's what they instinctively need. And so when the software of feminism conflicts with the firmware of evolution, that's where you have that conflict between those two. So that's when you get women to say, well, I know I'll be betraying the sisterhood and betraying feminism, but I really want to fuck this guy because he's 6 feet tall and he's a conservative and he gets shit done and he's into me. And that's when they start to become less feminist and they become more conservative, because that's what they're really looking for. Okay. Now, so we've said that traditional conservatism, we got into feminism, is an attempt to minimize the female submissive instinct, also through social indoctrination to enable women to more ruthlessly exploit the male protector instinct for the benefit of women. You'll notice that both of those, traditional conservatism and feminism, both have one end result. What is that? The benefit of women. I've said this a million times, is conservatives do not care about you masculine improvement. Ben Shapiro, go fuck yourself. Matt Walsh, go fuck yourself. You guys do not care about masculine male self-improvement. You do not care about guys getting zeroed out and then coming back from nothing, like working back from zero. You do not fucking care about that. You do not care. Scott Galloway, you don't care about these guys, these young men becoming gambling addicts. You don't care about any of that shit. You only want them to be better men so that they can benefit women. That's why. You're just as people have asked me this forever. Rollo, why do you say traditional conservatism are just as feminist as feminists? That's why. Because the end result is the benefit of women. That's why. The end result is always, well, women can't find eligible guys. Guys, you need to step up. We need to up the college enrollment. We need guys to do better. We need guys to step up to the plate. We need guys to we don't want them to compete against them in, these same areas and take jobs away from women, but we still need you to, make a token effort here. They don't want you to succeed for you. That's the difference between the red pill and these fuckwits. So every time somebody says, oh, Rollo, and I've just noticed this a lot recently, Rollo, the red pill is just the flip side of the coin for feminism. Fuck you. Fuck you. Okay? Because until feminists are on a DHS watch list, until feminists have diverting hate NGO, like censoring and abridging their right to free speech, until feminists are designated as terrorists and their leaders are radicalizing those terrorists, fuck you. Not even night and day. Until you see red pill guys marching in the street with like red hats instead of those pink pussy hats, to march on fucking, the White House or whatever, fuck you. Until there is 200 plus, or not even that, until there's a Seneca Falls event for red pill guys back in 1848, fuck you. It is not the same. You want it to be the same because you don't understand what the red pill is. And again, the red pill is just praxeology. It's just practical, pragmatic understanding of female nature, male nature, human nature, and the confluence of all of that together. That's what it is. It's not a movement. It's not a philosophy. It's not a religion. It's not a cult. It's none of that shit. It's not a system of belief. It is just information, and the information is what scares the shit out of you. That's why you need stupid, simple answers. That's why you need to dismiss it as the flip side of feminism. It's not. It never has been. It never will be. And I will die on that fucking hill, and I will rub your fucking nose in it every single time. And I will win, because I've had this conversation a billion fucking times. There is no comparison between the red pill and feminism. Feminism is a movement. Feminism is a supremacy movement. It is a female supremacist movement. The red pill is not. It is just about information. And the information that comes out is very unflattering to female nature. That's why you guys jump to, because men have the protector dynamic. And when you say anything that is unflattering about female nature, out comes that protector dynamic. And that's why guys white knight. They are innately, evolutionarily predisposed to defend milady's honor. So that's why when I say, well, men are innately more strong. They are better at, spatial acuity, whatever it is. They're better at STEM. They're better at, mathematics. Men are better at this and this and this and this. You know what happens after that? It's not women who do this. It's you have guys that come up and go, yeah, but women are like this and women are like that. You got to take into consideration that women. There has to be a yin to the yang. But if I say women are better at communication, women have better. I didn't know this until recently. Women have a better sense of smell than men do. And it makes sense too, because they have to smell for like pathogens so the baby doesn't die. Right? They have a better sense of smell than men. If I say that, oh yes, Rollo, thank you for looking that up on Wikipedia and where anybody can find it. Right? Yes, Rollo, you're right. Nobody says, well, men also have a better sense of hearing. Nobody says that. No, that is not the reflexive response. Nobody gives two flying fucks. I don't know if it's true, but nobody gives two flying fucks. If women have better smelling, and then they go, well, but men hear better, or men have better visual acuity, whatever it is. Men can chuck a spear more accurately or throw a rock more accurately than women. Nobody says that. Nobody cares. Because you don't defend men. There's no protector instinct for men. Fuck them. They can go die. They're the disposable sacrificial sex. It's in everything. It's in every story. It's in every religion. It's in every philosophy. Men are supposed to sacrifice. Even the Christ story is sacrifice. You have a man who dies on a cross for what? Altruism, basically, for the entire human race. A man sacrifices, dies. Men die for the betterment of the human race, for the betterment of women, whatever it is. Men are supposed to sacrifice. There is no protector dynamic for men. There's only protector dynamic for women. And that's why you get Daniel Penny. And you know what we do? We punish him. We punish that guy. We make a martyr of that guy. And trust me, I put this up on Twitter not too long ago. Martyrdom, being a martyr, has never gotten a woman wet. Never. You know what gets them wet? The guy who killed that motherfucker. That's who gets them wet. The guy who's the joker, the villain, the guy who beat the fuck out of that guy. That's who, remember I told you about the club and the guy got between him and the other dude shot the other dude? She goes home with the guy. That's who got her wet, not the guy who took a bullet for her. That's the dude. And it's going to be that way forever. You want to know why women love violent porn? You want to know why they like dark triad characters? Why they like 50 Shades of Grey?
Fantasies.
Yeah, well, it's that too, but it's also that those guys are winners. Those guys that come out on top. And it sounds evil and that's wrong, Rollo. That's bad. That's immoral. Yeah. Yes, it is. According to us, according to guys, it seems it's justice, right? It's based on the concept of debt, really, but it seems like an injustice. Oh my God, I can't you duplicitous woman, you immoral woman. You went off with the criminal and you hybristophilia, or why did you go off with the criminal? I was just talking about this. Women are hybristophiles. Not all women are hybristophiles, but only women are hybristophiles. They're the ones who marry the criminals. They're the ones with the conjugal visits. They're the one who create the fan club for Richard Ramirez and, what's that kid? Oh, Nicholas Cruz, Anders Breivik, who is Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy. Man, remember when they got Zac Efron? Mm-hmm. Was it to play Ted Bundy or was it Jeffrey Dahmer?
I think it was Jeffrey.
It was Jeffrey, one of those guys, right? Zac Efron is who you chose. Really? Now, they said he was a good-looking dude, right? I've seen pictures of both, Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy. If you saw them in Walmart, you'd probably go over to the next aisle. You would not want to be around these dudes. But in hindsight, once they went to jail and it was confirmed that they'd actually killed motherfuckers, then suddenly they become more attractive, right? To the point where Zac Efron plays. Really? Who made that casting choice? Probably some chick, right? But yeah, so we're looking at the protector dynamic. Now, we've discussed traditional conservatism. We've discussed feminism. Here we go. Now we're going to talk about the red pill, all right? So feminism is an attempt to minimize the female submissive instinct through also through social indoctrination to enable women to be more ruthlessly exploit male protective instinct for the benefit of women. Now here, the red pill. The red pill is an attempt to teach men to selectively suppress the male protective instinct to avoid its exploitation by women who are conditioned not to be submissive for the benefit of men. You understand what I'm saying? So what it's the red pill is about educating. It's about educating men so that they will not be exploited. They will have. What I'm doing right now is I'm teaching slaves to read. I'm teaching you how this protector dynamic works. And if you know, knowing is half the battle, right? What's the other half? Violence. But I'm teaching you guys like what the evolutionary underpinnings of why you feel like you need to step in front of live ammunition when a mass shooting goes around. You want to step in front of take a bullet for a woman, and you don't even know why you did it. Maybe afterwards, you go, what the fuck was I thinking? And then people will praise you. I mean, hopefully you survive, right? They'll praise you for taking the bullet for a woman that you sacrificed. You were a martyr. You sacrificed yourself. You're not getting laid. You're not getting any pussy for that. Like, have you seen these stories where the guy like donates a kidney to this girlfriend? His girlfriend like leaves and goes off with his best friend. And the guy's thinking, well, if I give her a kidney, she'll be with me forever. She'll owe me. She'll have to fuck me then, right? No, she'll take your fucking kidney and they're your best friend. That's what it comes down to. Because that's efficient. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. You guys can make that judgment call for yourself. I'm just telling you what it is. And that's all the red pill does. It doesn't deal with should. It doesn't deal with immoral. It doesn't deal with judgmental, moral, immoral. It doesn't deal with judgment. It leaves that to the individual to sort of make that call for themselves. It just tells you what is. That's why it will never be feminism. That's why it will never be tradcon. And that's why it rubs both of those ideologies the wrong way. And it also will rub MGTOW the wrong way because those are practices. MGTOW, black pill, tradcons, feminism, whatever, ism. If it has ism at the end of it, it's probably a practice. It's best practices. Here, we have all this knowledge, we have all this education, we have all this theory. How are we going to use this? How are we going to make this useful to us? Well, MGTOWs go, fuck it, I'm out. Never trust a woman, I'm gone. What, MGTOW, you might have a case. If you want to say MGTOW is the flip side to feminism, you might be right. Red pill's not. And the only reason you guys keep repeating that bullshit over and over and over again is because you're just fucking ignorant. And I didn't say you're stupid. I didn't say you're dumb. I said you're just ignorant of what the red pill really is. Okay, so that said, even in the old order, tradcons and feminists worked tirelessly towards the common goal of female rebellion and emancipation from this evolved order. In the new order, men must be freed from the unconscious knee-jerk expression of their protective instincts before they can deal with women in a way that maximizes their benefit rather than that of a stranger. Okay? A world dominated by feminism and feminist incentivized traditional conservatism is a world where men prioritize the interests of women and women prioritize the interests of themselves as well. It is a world half full of adults who must protect children they have no authority over and half full of unsupervised children. Okay, so I'm going to leave you guys at that. That's good enough for there. All right, so that is the big head babies. Now, how does this apply to our good friend Daniel Penny? Well, Penny, whether he knew this.
Okay. So here we are. Finally. So I'm going to show you my legal proposal. Yeah. So I'm going to focus on Section 4 family law. And right as we scroll down, towards the end of Section 2, I talk about my proposal with regards to certain types of hormones that affect brain chemistry and it affects even who you're attracted to. Even we're going to talk more about that and what it really means. So as we scroll down, and well, right here, here's my proposal. Any type of hormonal, brain chemistry, or other types of bodily alteration, except for treating a major in need of immediate attention, physiological disorder, or other exceptions as defined below, shall be construed as mutilation. Exceptions apply for those who have been convicted of committing a certain type of what gets you registered in a certain type of registry type of violence, and the conviction is valid. Any type of skin or hair care / superficial treatment, such as haircutting, dyeing, treatment, shall not be construed as mutilation. Tattoos and cosmetic surgery for non-physiological disorder reasons shall additionally not be construed as mutilation if there is consent. So what does this really mean? So let's first of all, I'm going to let you guys know that birth control, when you're on that pill, you're essentially, your body hormonally is in the same state as when you're pregnant. So you're going to be attracted to more feminine men, and during that time, in the natural hormonal cycles, the biological imperative is there for the guy to be more comforting, more cushy, because it's like a more vulnerable time. So she cannot be with the guy that is more aggressive, because it's part of like the protection instinct to protect the baby. So there is that hormonal cycle, but the birth control keeps a woman constantly in that cycle. And so when the woman then tries to get pregnant and goes off birth control, oftentimes they find out that they just cannot stand the guy. And then there's also the flip side. Maybe they are attracted to a guy, they have genuine burning desire. Once they go on birth control, they just cannot stand that guy. So it works both ways. So it's kind of scary when you think about it. And there are some people, for medicinal reasons, they need to have birth control. So like something severe like polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. So in those type of cases, it's fair game. But like once this type of law goes into effect, birth control going forward will just simply be just estrogen replacement. It won't be the same kind of pill. It will still have the same type of effect to help people who have this type of disorder, but it won't be it won't be like the chemicals will not be the exact same. It will be more specific towards just estrogen replacement. So now let's get to family law. All right. So this is the family law section. I'm just going to read like the most important parts of this. So all efforts must be made to ensure joint custody. However, if such attempts fail, the mother shall have primary right of custody. However, if the mother is not single, this does not apply if the relationship is with someone related to the child after completion of divorce / separation proceedings, then the father will have primary right of custody. In any case, the child's preferences shall be a priority unless he or she never had the chance to properly develop a relationship with any one of the parents. This rule only applies if the legal guardians are the biological parents and that there are no court rulings directly against either one of them from divorce / separation proceedings nor any criminal rulings. So the reasoning behind this is ideally we would always want parents to have joint custody of the children, but some situations may not allow for that. For example, two estranged parents who live far away from each other, the current laws usually favor the mother but the consequence is that a lot of the children don't get to know or spend as much time with their fathers. I took into consideration that when a woman is starting a new family with another man, she may have another child, during which time she will need care, and there is a noticeable shift in the power dynamic in the house, even if the mother is a bread earner, and in some cases, being the bread earner even can tilt the power dynamic towards the stepfather's direction. In such cases, it's more appropriate for the biological father to have custody of the children. In an extreme example, the stepfather may even be hostile, and the children will not have access to their mother to properly protect them, especially if she's expecting. However, if the mother is single again, she may yet again have priority over the custody of the children. So that's the custody side. And unless if any property is jointly owned by the separating/divorcing spouse, no person under any circumstances shall be entitled to any portion of the estranged or former spouse's wealth or income, unless in the case of debt from a lawful product or service or loan provided consistent with state and federal rules, or for the treatment or therapy pertaining to abuse or assault of the victim, if the other estranged or former spouse is convicted by evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. Divorced/separated parents must by default be allowed to decide amongst themselves how to manage the finances for the upbringing of their children, unless if either parent is unfit due to criminal conduct, neglect, or mental issues. So I solved a lot of the problems there. So in the cases where it's necessary for judicial intervention, a specific amount shall be stipulated, never percentages of income, for managing the finances for the upbringing of the children, which shall never exceed 20% of the income. In the cases of paternity fraud, a sentence no less than the amount of time from the conception of a child to the time it takes to reach the age of majority adulthood shall be imposed, with community service being a possibility as a way of serving the sentence. The person who has been defrauded shall be released from all obligations and duly compensated for any past obligations, along with court and attorney fees that the defrauded person had to pay. Additionally, all compensation shall be paid back to the person who has been defrauded before the offender can be released from prison. Furthermore, the offender must be, so that's the first part. So furthermore, the offender must be registered as a sex offender for the duration of the offender's life, and the record cannot be sealed or expunged or in any way hidden. In any case, any law that abridges or otherwise infringes on a person's ability to challenge the paternity of a child that is presented as the biological offspring of the said person shall be null and void. And in all cases, a person will retain the right to challenge the paternity of a child that is presented as a biological offspring of the said person, and must be duly informed of this right every time matters regarding or related to paternity arises. Okay. Now, yes, I know what you're reading, and there's a reason for that. I'm not gonna go. Actually, I am going to go over it. So, I'm not a coward. Should a male seek to be married to more than one female spouse concurrently, he or she must have the coherent and intellectual written consent from the current spouses and any adult deemed relevant on an individual case-by-case basis. In all cases, including children who depends on the legal guardians for resources or support, regardless of whether they were previously claimed as dependents by the legal guardians or share the same residence if there are any, and the implicit consent of minor children if there are any. Females may not be married to more than one male spouse concurrently. And there's a reason why I said that. And to clarify what I really said is, if a male wants to have get involved with another woman aside from the woman that he's currently with, and if there are any kids that are dependents or live with them, the male and the current wife and the kids living with them. So along with the wife, he would need, or the wives, he would need all of their permission. And as for minor children, since they technically cannot sign, and the only way a signature works for anybody below the age of 18 is if the parent signs with them. So in this case, it really wouldn't count in that way. Like with the mom just like signs it off. But even so, like it really wouldn't count. So the implicit consent means like they don't get. I mean, they get along. Like they don't have any problems with this new person. That would be like the implicit consent. So, and I thought a lot about this, by the way. So note, marriage comes with legal responsibilities, benefits, and rights such as joint tax filing equal to lower overall taxes. And honestly, with my tax proposal, I don't even know if that might even be a thing in the future. And that's a separate part. That's a separate section. You'll just have to check out another one of my videos for that. However, polyandry does not allow, which is a woman having multiple husbands. As strange as it sounds, I'm going to go in depth with this. So it's like in matriarchal type of societies, which don't last, and if they do last, they never become civilized, or they go straight back to like monogamy or polygyny. And you're going to understand why. So, however, polyandry does not allow the males to equally enjoy the relationship, especially regarding conceiving, which is neglectful and unhealthy and unacceptable and fails in the long run. This is essentially a type of relationship where a person spends all their time and fulfills all the desires of one partner while neglecting another due to an inherent lack of consistency in the relationship, where every given male will experience neglect at any given point in time in favor of another given male throughout the course of the relationship until the relationship from a given male's end is either broken off or the dynamic of the overall relationship changes, or both, either by choice or circumstantially, or both. This problem, however, does not exist for females in polygyny. Even medically, this is harmful as it puts pressure on women to produce children instead of there being a natural flow in accordance with her desires, comfort, and ability. Is this really humane? And shockingly, in the past, and still now in some places, rural societies with scarce resources and shortage of women would have an entire family of men. Brothers marry one girl, with the oldest brother having all the control, including access to whom and when, and this was to avoid splitting property due to the scarcity of resources. Also, in many societies, women were swapped like in a game of cards as they were treated like or considered property. This practice was never common due to the ratio of hassles, such as the legal questions regarding the paternity of the children and the lack of gains with society as a whole. Polygyny, on the other hand, in the times of famine, plague, disease, or war, prevented women from being unmarried and childless or brought to shame through prostitution, despite a shortage of men, and allowed societies to quickly recover and rebuild itself from a drastic drop in population instead of dying out. I cannot ever in good conscience promote polyandry knowing what I know. And there's another side to this, the hypergamy side, so the psychological side of this. So a big part of the reason why I did not include the hypergamy side of this is, one, I started drafting up this legal proposal like a long time ago, like more than uh, almost 4 years ago. So more than 3 years ago. No, actually, yeah, it's more than 4 years ago. Almost five, actually. When I first started thinking up of this and started drafting it. Anyway, so like I started this right around 17, and at 8 years of age, and I turned 18. Now I'm right now 21, and I'm turning 22. So okay, so more than 3 years ago, so almost 4 years ago. Okay, so that's part of the reason. The other part of the reason is people can very easily say, "I'm different. I'm not like the other girls," you know, and to an extent, it is true. There's nuance to every human being. Everyone is their own individual person, after all. Um, so there's definitely a truth to that. Um, but the biological facts you cannot refute. But anyways, I'm still going to say it. So all females have a biological instinct to filter men out, and they optimize for one particular guy. And there's an alpha, and there's right now in red pill language, we call that there's alpha and the beta side of it. So the alpha side is like the person that they have genuine desire for, the person that they adore. The beta side of it is the provisioning side. So historically, if you had one, you had the other. But in modern society, you have this good guy, that tame person that does what is right and kind of steps up, like kind of like what Charlie is telling people to do, but they just don't have that, you know, that raw, you know, that raw personality. And then there are those who do have that raw personality, but they are not in the best place. And women generally have to balance between both aspects of hypergamy. And they're also not designed to psychologically and physically to be involved with multiple men at the same time. And again, so the birth control also too pushes women more towards a beta, more of that soft teddy bear sort of men, you know, the type of guys who have the life together. Whereas when they're off of it, they lean more towards the alpha. And a lot of this also has to do more with their age. So once they're like around their 30s, late 20s, early 30s, when they're not able to compete at the same level or be able to get the same kind of guy as they once could, that's when they start to try to lock the guy down. And a lot of this is also like influenced by birth control as well. So yeah, so that's just the hypergamy side of it. And as for my own personal experience, the thing is, growing up, I've encountered a number of girls who have taken a long-term interest in me at the same time. When even one girl does this, it is not something I can ignore, even if I want to. As such, I cannot forget such people, and my memories of them exist in various shades, ranging from fondness to sorrow, and oftentimes an alternation between these shades. So the current laws, as currently written, are very unfair for people like me and those people whom I've just mentioned. It would be very helpful to consider this at the very end, where I explain the various aspects of my motivations for writing this logical outline. In any case, throughout human history, societies, even polygynous ones, quite common until recently, last couple hundred years, until Christianity established the rule of one. Not Christianity, the church, in medieval feudalism times established the rule of one, and from then on through Western colonization, it spread like wildfire. But up until that point, polygyny was allowed, but even then, most people observed the one man, one wife rule, as it should probably be, as polygyny is quite clearly not for everyone, and even less can afford it, even though in some cases it may be a necessity in society. So very few people have that emotional fortitude, like the psychological capacities to be able to even be able to manage multiple women, like um, let alone just the charm. Like you need to be really, really smooth to be able to even attempt this, and then having the ability to manage multiple women at the same time, and then have resources. That's very, very rare to have that type of life set up. Okay, yeah, just going through this. Um, so you guys are probably aware of like how America used to have Jim Crow type of laws. So what you're seeing towards the right, it talks about like recodifying into the Constitution to never ever allow these type of laws to exist ever again. So if any law ever such like that is ever passed ever again, it would be unconstitutional. And the rest of it has to do with more about close relationships, and certain boundaries with regards to such things. But an important thing to look at here is if you want to ban, and so this is also a part where I essentially ban the porn industry. So, however, no institution or organization shall employ or hire or organize individuals for sex or committing sexual acts, or nor any individual shall be allowed to do the same when exercising power within or taking action on behalf of any institution or organization. So, the porn industry is what they do is they set people up so that they have an intimate encounter. That's illegal from now on once this law is passed. So obviously that now is much later in the future, but once this becomes law, it will be illegal from that point forward. And also, if you're taking any action on behalf of an organization or exercising power, sex cannot be involved in that, which will also be illegal from that point forward. Oh man. All right. So the next thing I want to show you is my proposal for the consent rules. So, and I'm well aware different people have different opinions about this matter, but I'm going to speak from personal experience. I'm also going to talk a little bit of psychology as well, and you're really going to understand like what got me into politics. So my website here is www.restorefamiliesusa.com. So our mission is to tackle laws that are designed to weaken and divide people, to undermine American families. And I'm going to show you in a minute what the Learn More button does towards the end of this video, if I don't forget, of course. So let's scroll down. Here we are. So what inspired me to be involved in politics? So as a kid, I was forced to turn down a Scandinavian girl of my age, she's a Swedish girl, because of the way the consent laws are written in the states like my home state of Kansas, where I would be the first to turn 18, and we were both below 16, the age of consent, 14 to 15 years of age at the time. I did not know, and she asked me out for a dance, and she had her eyes on me for a while. I did not know, nor did I trust her parents, because growing up, I found out that a lot of the kids I grew up with, their parents taught them false and very negative stereotypes about people of my faith. And there are some other things that she did that made me trust her judgment and character. Like, she's still among the better girls, but even with someone like that, because of what feminism, what it did, there are some things that she did where I was like, yeah, is it really worth it to just try to fight for that relationship? Because if it wasn't for that, I probably would have fought for it, even with these type of odds. But Also, in Kansas, parents can marry off their kids between the ages of 16 and 17. They can decide who their kids get to see. And the things that she did, it's like nothing cheating or anything related. It's just like this some standoffish nature that she has. So, anyways, also in Kansas, parents can marry off their kids between the ages of 16 and 17. They can decide who their kids get to see. And the law is additionally unconstitutional, violates the 14th Amendment, equal protection of the law, because on one hand, it is illegal for a person 18 plus to be involved with anyone below 18, but with parental approval marriage, then it is not a problem, because then the statutory laws do not apply. The sheer hypocrisy of the law. And in some Republican conservative states, there's a Romeo-Juliet clause. So as long as it's within 4 years age gap, the statutory laws won't apply. And I don't think it always works. But Kansas does not recognize that at all. And what's even more distressing is that the law allows people to be intimate while not allowing them to form long-lasting relationships until they're both 18 plus. So, yeah. So I'm going to go back to my proposal here. So in the criminal cases that arises from or contains any sexual activities, the courts will consider the relevant facts, nature of the activities, physical, psychological profiles, and intentions of all the parties during this sexual activities to objectively and impartially determine any physical violence, not being in a sound state of mind, extortion, blackmail, impersonation, and who is a perpetrator, if there is any. Depending on the particular facts of an individual case, the courts may defer any vulnerable parties to the care of or recommend to them to seek the aid of social services. So this also establishes a definition for grape, because under modern day legal system, in a lot of cases, a female can just change her mind and just revoke consent. So like maybe she slept with you now, but 30 years later she decides, oh, she wasn't feeling it. And you're especially vulnerable if you're not in a long-term relationship with her, because you can argue that relationship was like, hey, you've been with this guy and you continued being with this guy, so you can't really say this is grape. But some courts might even like be like, hey, no, it's still grape. It's ridiculous. So it's just stuff like that in mind. But anyways, so keeping in mind what I said about how the laws allow people to be intimate with each other without allowing people to form lasting relationships, so Congress nor the states shall make any law that will promote sexual intercourse while prohibiting marriage or vice versa. Whether an individual is deemed capable of consensually marrying and having sex shall be determined on whether the individual is capable of forming deep romantic, long-term emotional bonds, attachments, or relationship, as determined from a relevant practitioner of a good standing for the purposes of marriage or by court in criminal cases. If the individual happens to be below the age of majority, the legal guardian of the individual is bound by and answerable to the law as part of their duty as guardians to give full support to the individuals as per the necessities of the marriage within reason, including but not limited to separation and divorce proceedings. So why? So I was reading a book by this neuroscientist, the late Dr. James Fallon, and he talks about a crucial part of a curious part of the brain, the limbic system, which is the first part of the brain to fully mature, and the maturation completes right around second, third stage of puberty. So the connections in the limbic system, the orbitofrontal cortex, which is part of the prefrontal cortex, and the medial prefrontal cortex, and the connections of those two parts of the prefrontal cortex with the amygdala, it starts to solidify right around puberty. And then, the insula, which is also part of the limbic system, I mean, it's not even starts. It solidifies around puberty. As soon as those sex steroids are released, those regions start to solidify. Those connections start to solidify, and that's the region of the brain where emotions are felt and processed. So that's the very first part of the brain to mature. The emotions and the morality, which is in the frontal cortex. And the thing with early bloomers, they go to puberty early, but they have to wait for a long time before their upper brain, the logical brain, the dorsal stream starts to mature. And for everyone, regardless of whether they're early or late bloomer, that area tends to mature in their late teens and early 20s. And eventually, by the age of 25, the emotional and the logical brain balances out. So there's this region called the anterior cingulate, which does the switching up. So a person starts to get very emotional right around puberty, and as the dorsal stream starts to mature and it starts to take over, the anterior cingulate switches up, and it starts to balance by the age of 25. The dorsal and the ventral streams, the cold cognition, the upper prefrontal cortex, and the lower prefrontal cortex, which is part of the limbic system. So the upper brain and then like the emotional brain, they start to balance out. So for people who go into puberty early, and the upper brain, the logical brain, it's also part of like critical thinking, cold cognition, cold calculated thinking, critical thinking, executive function, so like getting things done. So it's part of all of that. Yeah. So for early bloomers, what happens? It slows down the maturation of the upper brain, the cold cognition brain, the dorsal stream, the logical brain. It actually slows it down. So there's this extended maturation phase. No, it's more like it fully matures at a somewhat later age. So like past the age of 25. So right around someone's 20s, like especially mid 20s, and towards their 30s, does the dorsal stream fully mature, especially for early bloomers. And it's usually right around like when a person becomes 18, 19, when the anterior cingulate switches up. So for an early bloomer, they remain in that emotional state of mind for a long time before that switching up happens. So that's just the technical neuroscience side of things. So it makes sense that you would have parents be involved until that switching up happens, until the logical brain is fully mature enough where the person can fully take care of and get on with their day-to-day affairs. But they're emotionally capable of falling in love, though. This is the key thing I want you to understand. And any children produced by an unemancipated individual, so when a parent emancipates you, they essentially are handing you over kind of full rights to kind of take care of yourself. And it's also kind of responsibility. There's some additional laws that still are in effect until you legally become an adult. But for the most part, you're given the responsibility of an adult and you're handed over a lot of the rights of an adult. So any children, but for those who are unemancipated, so parents have not approved and given up their rights to still take care of the child and not kind of signed off on them on going their own way and doing adult stuff. So for any children produced by an emancipated individual below the age of maturity or incapable of consenting shall temporarily have the individual's guardians act on the individual's behalf as the children's legal guardian until the individual reaches the age of maturity and capable of consenting. Okay, we're now at the last of like the home stretch. Okay. So in the case that the conception of a child possesses a significant risk of or causes harm to the mother, or there are confirmed cases of fetal anomaly that is incompatible with life, or there is a death of the fetus, so the baby has died in the womb, naturally, presumably, or may cause the child to suffer considerable anguish throughout its life related to survival, or the conception of the child is by physical violence, not being in a sound state of mind, extortion, blackmail, or impersonation, termination of pregnancy may be allowed. And this, by the way, is before 120 days of age, which I'm going to get to. And you also appreciate the fact that I did not include incest. Yeah. So it's only if it causes harm to the mother, or the child would end up living a very painful life, or the child would die anyways, or has already died. And for some reason, like, it's not bleeding out, which can happen. Sometimes miscarriages happen and it just doesn't bleed out, in which case you need to get surgically involved. So, however, in all cases except where the child is conceived by physical violence, not being in a sound state of mind, extortion, blackmail, or impersonation, the biological father of the child and the mother must both consent. However, in the case where the child is conceived by physical violence, not being in sound state of mind, extortion, blackmail, or impersonation, the mother or father decides if the other biological parent will be allowed to have a say in determining the fate of the unborn child, depending on who is proven to be the abuser. However, if either parent was intoxicated at the time of conception, but nobody is guilty of physical violence, extortion, blackmail, impersonation, then the default provisions as written above apply. In other words, nobody's guilty of rape. And if you're on a birth control pill, you're technically intoxicated. But you can't just go and say, "Oh, this person raped me." And like that's nonsense. But if like someone's like clearly passed out, or they're clearly not able to even like, like there's like very clear slurred speech and they're all sluggish, then obviously then in that case that would be rape. But like anyways, like if someone's intoxicated, it's like obviously a good idea not to mess with them, but for obvious reasons like this. But just saying. Yeah, and also another thing too is like women can also rape men too. I know it sounds strange, like if the woman is like physically bigger and like heavier, or if like she's like much older. So that can also happen. Rare, but it can happen. Especially if the woman's like very fit and very physically strong, and But again, rape is one of those type of things that is it's really not the norm. It's relatively rare, despite inflated statistics. And then they talk about they have like this estimate of how much is unreported. But here's the thing: if it's unreported, it's unreported. It's like you really don't know. Like you can run math and sampling errors and sampling calculations and sample error, statistical significance, all this type of statistical calculations. But if it's unreported, it's unreported. You just really don't know. However, if either the biological father or mother of the unborn fetus is a minor, so below the age of 18, or below the legal age of adult, or is incapable of consenting as per the definitions that we've established, where a person has to be able to emotionally bond. And then the biological parents and the legal guardians, if any of the respective biological mother or father of the unborn fetus shall be involved in determining the fate of the unborn fetus alongside with them, or in his or her stand if they're unable to consent, or if he or she is convicted of raping, of being guilty party in the case of rape, and there must be unanimous consensus among those who are alive and able to consent. So yeah, in the rare cases where someone is like genuinely did commit the crime of rape and they also happen to be a minor, I also put the provision that their parents would in their stead be able to like participate in the decision making process. And there has to be unanimous consensus, by the way. However, in the case of complication that is immediately life-threatening or otherwise requiring urgent medical attention related to or as a result of ongoing pregnancy, emergency procedures may be performed to terminate the pregnancy. This does not mean abortion like the way we mean in the traditional sense, and save the mother from death or any form of permanent physical harm. Termination of pregnancy is essentially a kind of abortion, but you don't necessarily have to kill the child. What they typically do, especially with like third trimester pregnancies, they would have to surgically remove the child. So they often there are two ways. Like you either kind of do a C-section and then you just kill the baby, or they just kind of just pick out the baby's parts and just like bleed and like remove everything out. Which again is, I saw a video of that and it just came back the image. Oh my god! But that's just how abortion is like handled, like actual like abortion. But in this case, we're just delivering the baby just a little bit early, you know, and not delivering the baby and then just killing it. No, but if you keep the baby alive, we treat both the mother and the baby. And in the cases of egg donor pregnancy, the term mother will apply to both the egg receiver and the biological mother, who both must consent along with the biological father. However, in all cases with exception of, so that's the first part. So however, in all cases with exception of cases of conception by physical violence, not being in a sound state of mind, extortion, blackmail, impersonation, and the fetus is below 120 days of age, this law applies only for human fetuses, excluding the time in suspended animation, so if like the embryo is frozen. So long story short, so like when I was like editing this, so in one of my previous edits, so I've edited this so many times the past 4 years. So what I would do is I would go on Word and I would do like search and I would find, and I would just do replace all. So that's why you'll see a lot of this repetition. So and the fetus is below 120 days of age after fertilization. If the fetus is not wanted by familial consensus as per the provisions above, so like all people got together and they all said no, and it's below 120 days of age, every effort must be made to treat both the mother and the child, but not limited to premature birth and cesarean section if needed. So that's a C-section. So yeah, so the exception is for. So yeah, so all efforts must be made to treat both the mother and child, including but not limited to premature birth and cesarean section if needed, which is a C-section. But the exceptions would be if it's below 120 days of age and everybody said, hey, we can't be having the child. And this is like a huge improvement from like current abortion laws where only the mother makes the sole decision. And it's wrong because it takes two to tango. The father has just as much right as the mother. And the abortion would only be allowed in very limited cases, by the way. In any case, both biological parents who shall be the de facto legal guardians and therefore liable for the care and upbringing of the child until the child reaches the age of majority, and any intermediates, if applicable, responsible for the conception of the fetus or child are liable for the proper care of the fetus or child and the pregnant mother, biological or surrogate / egg receiver during pregnancy and postpartum recovery at minimum, and the government must provide necessary aid applies to federal, state and local jurisdictions within states and territories. Okay. So this is obvious reason here is like you cannot just run away from your duty as a mother or father. So you become the de facto legal guardian, unless if the child is put up for adoption and somebody else steps up to adopt the child. The other reason is I have heard of cases where a surrogate mother carried two children, one is her own and her husband's, and the other belonged to the two clients. They had to fight the agency to become the legal guardians of their own children. Apparently, the agency is a legal guardian and was trying not to allow them their parental rights without them paying for adopting their own biological children. So it's to avoid bullshit like that. So any fetus illegally aborted 120 days after fertilization shall be legally classified as murder, and the fetus is granted the full rights and privileges of a person, including but not limited to inheritance if the benefactor is deceased. An appropriate trusted adult shall be appointed to manage the assets until the child reaches age of maturity and who can be inherited from. Any crimes against the unborn child in relation to such matters shall be classified and treated as a crime against a person as per applicable laws and the definitions of and within such laws at federal, state, and territorial governments. If the fetus is to die at this point, it must be eligible for funeral, and its last rites to be observed as that of the passing of an infant or child, and not to be used for research or medicine. So its body, if an unborn baby is to die at this point, it's eligible for funeral and its last rites to be observed, and as that of a passing of an infant or a child, and not to be used for research or medicine. Like no part of the body whatsoever. Yeah. So after 120 days, the fetus would be granted the full rights of a person. So in cases where any fetus 120 days of age or older after fertilization, like I said, there's like some things in parentheses that are repeated, so I'm not going to keep repeating myself. That sustains an injury if an injury occurred prior to this age, but the injury or the resulting disorder persists, or at or after 120 days of age, due to assault, shall be classified and treated as a crime against a person as per applicable laws and the definitions of and within such laws at federal, state, and territorial governments. In any cases where any fetus reaches 120 days of age after fertilization and is a byproduct of rape, and conceived within or under American jurisdiction, territory, administration, the unborn child becomes a United States citizen. henceforth and grant the full rights and privileges of and is treated no different than that of a natural born American. Note, I wanted to be impartial to the mother, child, and the father, and even the mother's domestic partner, if not the same as the biological father, and create the foundations for addressing the additional legal complications that arise when working with surrogate egg donor pregnancies. However, no practices that violate the boundaries of a male-female marriage or romantic relationship shall be allowed in medicine or healthcare. So essentially, the medical establishment shall not be used in such a way that someone can get cucked, whether it's the male or the female. Failure of a judge, jury member, or attorney to abide by the laws of this section shall result in invoking procedures of removal and criminal litigation of the judge, jury member, or attorney, respectively. All matters with regards to or related to this section shall, prior to the adoption of this amendment, shall be audited. Okay. We're almost done here. So when you click the Learn More button, you get access to $1.5 million value in lobbyist fees. You know, it's great to have a movement, but the laws are passed through congressmen and senators. Congressmen, congresswomen, and senators, and lobbyists are the ones that interact with them on behalf of businesses and corporations and LLCs and partnerships and just businesses, you know. Rich businesses, by the way, so typically corporations. So lobbyists are the ones who draft up at least an initial copy of the law. Then you have the Senate and the congressmen, congresswomen, staff workers that kind of just work with it, and then the House and the Senate ultimately passes the law. So I've just done the heavy lifting for you, like a lobbyist. And instead of charging $1.5 million, if you buy the paperback, you pay $57. You buy the hardcover, you pay $76 because I have to pay more to print the hardcover. So it deducts from the money that I would have. It deducts from the money that you pay, and there's a certain royalty fee that I have to pay. There's a certain portion of the money that Amazon gets a cut off. I get most of the money though, it's like around 60%, but for the ebook I only make 35%. Yeah, and that's that. But yeah, it's like incredibly dumb not to have a copy of this book, whether you're like a part of a movement or you're starting your own movement, or if you just straight up just want to like contact your senator or your representative. It's just really dumb not to have this type of a book, because the thing that businesses that understand is like when it comes to like passing the laws or getting the laws that favor them, they understand it's a business negotiation. Most people don't. It doesn't click in their head unless if you like point that out to them. So, and the thing with negotiation is there's like a negotiation table, and you never show up to a table empty-handed. If you catch my drift, if you catch what I'm saying. So be sure to head over to my website so you can access my book. The best way to access it is you check the description below. There's a link to my website, and when you click the Learn More button, it'll take you right here. And my website also has a table of contents. It also talks talks about some of my clauses in my books, some of my other clauses with regards to anti-corruption, holding intelligence agencies accountable, and my proposal like legal clauses for paternity fraud. So it contains some of the clauses we've covered here and some of my other clauses. So be sure to check that out, and I'll interact with you there. And I'm out for this one.